I always thought my life was built on a solid foundation. My name is Alex, and I was a man who lived for love, specifically, the love I shared with my wife, Sarah. We had been married for 5 years, and every moment felt like a page from a storybook. Our small apartment was filled with memories, laughter, and the echoes of our dreams. We often talked about the future, kids, a house with a white picket fence, and a dog named Max. The vision was clear, and I worked hard to make it a reality. I was a graphic designer, and while my job didn't pay much, it was enough to keep us comfortable. Sarah was a kindergarten teacher, and her passion for nurturing young minds made her a beacon of warmth in our lives. Our evenings were spent cooking together, sharing stories over a bottle of cheap wine, and enjoying the simple pleasures of life. We had our routines: movie nights on Fridays, brunch at our favorite cafe on Sundays. The world outside could be chaotic, but inside our little bubble, everything felt right. I couldn't have asked for a better partner, and I thought she felt the same way. But beneath the surface of our idyllic life, cracks were beginning to form. I didn't see them at first. I was too wrapped up in my work and the daily grind to notice the subtle changes in Sarah. She became more distant, often lost in her phone or preoccupied with work. I chalked it up to stress, the kind that comes with teaching young children. I wanted to be supportive, so I let her have her space, believing that soon we would be back to our old selves. That was until I stumbled upon a message that shattered my world. It was a Saturday evening, and Sarah had gone out for drinks with some colleagues. I was at home, trying to finish a project that was due the following week. My phone buzzed, and I absent-mindedly picked it up, expecting a message from my boss. Instead, it was a notification from Sarah's phone. I don't know what compelled me to open it, but I did. The message was from a number I didn't recognize, but the contents made my heart drop. "Can't wait to see you tonight, love. I'll be waiting for you after the gig." My stomach twisted into knots as I read and reread the words, trying to make sense of them. Who was this person? And why was my wife calling someone else love? I felt a surge of adrenaline as I tried to calm my racing heart. I needed to know more to find out who this was. I quickly searched the number online and found it belonged to a local wedding singer named Mark. He had a decent reputation, known for his smooth voice and charm. The thought of him serenading couples on their special days made my blood boil. I could picture Sarah, eyes twinkling, lost in the music, her heart fluttering for someone else. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces fell into place. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way she would smile a little too brightly when she talked about music. It all made sickening sense. I felt anger boiling within me, but it was eclipsed by an overwhelming sense of betrayal. My mind raced with thoughts of how I would confront her, how I would demand the truth. But the thought of her face, the hurt in her eyes, made me hesitate. Instead, I decided to do something else. I would gather evidence first. I needed to know for sure before I confronted her. The thought of being wrong terrified me, but the thought of being right was worse. I needed to be prepared. As I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the empty space beside me, I felt the weight of my decision settle on my shoulders. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a man betrayed, and I would do whatever it took to uncover the truth. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a dark path I was about to tread. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and heartache. I went through the motions of daily life while my mind was consumed with thoughts of betrayal. I kept replaying that message over and over, dissecting every word and inflection. I watched Sarah as she moved around the apartment, her laughter ringing hollow in my ears. Each time she smiled at me, I felt a pang of anger mixed with sadness. How could she betray me like this? I wondered if she had been planning this for a while, or if it was something that had just happened. I became a shadow in my own life, lurking in the background while my heart ached with the truth I was slowly uncovering. I started to follow her, noting the times she left for work events and the hours she spent away from home. I didn't confront her yet. I didn't want to tip my hand. Instead, I became a silent detective, piecing together the clues that would confirm my worst fears. On one fateful Friday evening, I decided to follow her after she mentioned she was going to a colleague's birthday party. I felt a knot in my stomach as I watched her get ready, slipping into a cute dress that accentuated her curves. I wanted to scream out, to tell her to stay home with me, but I held back. I waited until she left the apartment before I grabbed my keys and followed her. The party was at a small bar on the other side of town, a place I had never been. I parked a few blocks away and walked toward the noise of laughter and music. My heart raced with every step, a mix of anticipation and dread. As I approached the entrance, I paused, taking a deep breath. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The dim lighting and lively atmosphere hit me like a wave. I scanned the room, trying to find Sarah among the crowd. And then I saw her, laughing and chatting with a group of friends. I felt a flicker of relief mixed with anger. She seemed to be enjoying herself. But that relief quickly turned to fury when I noticed him, the wedding singer, Mark. He was standing close to her, his arm casually draped around her shoulders, his smile charming and disarming. I felt the heat rising in my chest as I watched them. The way she leaned into him, the way she brushed her hair behind her ear as she laughed at something he said, it was all a sickening display of intimacy. I could barely breathe as I realized that my worst fears were coming true. She was not just flirting, she was falling for him. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I took a step closer, but I quickly pulled back. I didn't want to confront her here, not in a public place surrounded by friends. I needed to gather more evidence to confirm what I already knew. I pulled out my phone and discreetly snapped a few pictures of them together, her radiant smile juxtaposed against my darkening heart. After what felt like an eternity, I decided it was time to leave. I turned and walked out of the bar, the sound of their laughter trailing behind me like a haunting echo. I felt hollow, as if a part of me had been ripped away. The reality of her betrayal pressed down on me like a weight I couldn't shake off. Once home, I paced our small living room, the photos still fresh in my mind. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a burning desire for revenge. I had trusted her, loved her, and yet here I was, a man betrayed. The thought of that wedding singer with his smooth voice and charming demeanor made my blood boil. I knew I had to act, but how? Revenge was a dangerous game, one that could backfire. I had to think carefully. What could I do to make him pay for taking my wife from me? I racked my brain, weighing the options. I could confront them, expose their affair, but that would only bring more pain. I wanted to hit him where it hurt, to ruin him in a way that would make him feel the depth of my betrayal. As the night wore on, I began to formulate a plan. I would dig deeper into Mark's life, uncover his secrets, and find a way to destroy his career. I would make sure he lost his voice, the only thing that made him special. It was fitting, poetic even. He stole my wife, and in return, I would take away his livelihood. The thought consumed me, and for the first time in days, I felt a sense of purpose. I began to research him online, gathering information about his gigs, his social media presence, and any connections he had in the industry. I would find a way to sabotage him, to ensure he would never sing again. As I sat in the dim light of our living room, I felt a dark satisfaction wash over me. I was no longer just a victim. I was a man on a mission. And I wouldn't stop until I had what I wanted. The days turned into a blur as I dove deeper into my plan for revenge. I became consumed by it, the obsession taking root in my mind like a weed choking a flower. My waking hours were filled with thoughts of Mark, the wedding singer who had stolen my wife's heart, and my nights were spent strategizing how to dismantle his life piece by piece. I had taken to stalking his social media profiles, learning everything I could about him. Mark was a charmer, and his posts were filled with pictures of him performing at weddings, surrounded by happy couples. Each image felt like a dagger to my heart. I could see the joy in Sarah's eyes as she looked at him, and it made my blood boil. I had to remind myself that this was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about making him pay for what he had taken from me. One late evening, as I scrolled through his Instagram feed, I stumbled upon a post that caught my eye. Mark was performing at a high-profile wedding in a few weeks, the kind of event that would draw attention from local media and be a stepping stone for his career. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was my opportunity. If I could ruin that performance, it would not only humiliate him but also put a significant dent in his reputation. I started plotting how I could sabotage the event. I needed to find a way to disrupt the wedding without directly implicating myself. I began gathering information about the venue, the wedding planner, and the couple getting married. It wasn't hard. With a little digging, I found out that the wedding was being held at an upscale hotel downtown. The venue was known for its extravagant events and high-profile clientele. As I mapped out my plan, I realized I needed to be careful. I had to avoid drawing attention to myself, and I couldn't afford any mistakes. I spent hours crafting my strategy, weighing the risks and potential outcomes. I could create a false identity, an anonymous tip to the wedding planner about Mark's past, something scandalous that would force him out of the gig. But what could I use? I scoured the internet for any dirt I could find, searching for anything that would tarnish his reputation. It wasn't long before I discovered a few articles that mentioned Mark's questionable behavior. At previous gigs, complaints about him being too flirtatious with brides and inappropriate comments made to guests. This was the angle I needed. I could exaggerate those claims, paint him as a liability, and ensure he wouldn't be welcome at the wedding. I crafted a fake email account, a simple name that wouldn't raise suspicions. I wrote the email to the wedding planner, detailing my concerns about Mark's past behavior and how it might affect the couple's special day. I poured every ounce of my anger into those words, making sure to sound credible while keeping my identity hidden. Once that was done, I turned my attention to the venue. I needed to create a distraction, something that would draw attention away from Mark during the performance. I thought about how weddings were filled with guests who could easily be swayed by a little chaos. Maybe a staged scene, something that would create a commotion without being too obvious. I enlisted the help of a couple of friends who had no idea what I was planning. I told them I wanted to do something fun at a wedding, and they were more than willing to help. I described a scenario where we could create a scene, perhaps a fake argument between guests that would escalate into something more. It was a perfect cover, and I felt a rush of excitement as I envisioned it unfolding. As the days passed, I could feel the anticipation building inside me. I had never been a vindictive person. I had always believed in treating others with kindness. But now, I was a man transformed by betrayal. Each step I took toward my plan felt like a victory, a reclaiming of power that had been stripped away from me. But there was also a nagging voice in the back of my mind, whispering doubts that I tried to ignore. Was I really willing to go this far? Was this who I had become? I brushed those thoughts aside. I had to stay focused. This was not just about revenge. It was about justice. Mark had taken something irreplaceable from me, and I was determined to make him pay. As the date of the wedding approached, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. I was about to cross a line I could never uncross. The thought of seeing Sarah at the wedding, possibly with Mark, sent a shiver down my spine. I had to steel myself to remind myself of the reasons behind my actions. On the day of the wedding, I dressed in dark clothes, blending in with the crowd. I arrived early, taking a moment to survey the venue. The place was beautiful, adorned with flowers and elegant decorations, a picture-perfect setting for a couple in love. I felt sick to my stomach as I thought about how Mark would be the one to serenade them, the one to bask in the glory of their happiness while I stood in the shadows, ready to unleash my plan. With my heart racing, I waited for the moment to set everything in motion. I could hear the music beginning to play, and I knew it was almost time. As I took a deep breath, I reminded myself that this was for me, for my dignity. I was ready to make sure that Mark would lose more than just his voice. The atmosphere inside the wedding venue was electric. Guests mingled, laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, and the sweet scent of flowers hung like a veil over the proceedings. I stood off to the side, my heart pounding as I watched Mark set up for his performance. He looked confident, charming, and utterly unaware of the storm that was about to hit him. As the minutes ticked by, I felt my resolve harden. I was no longer just a betrayed husband. I was an avenger, a man on a mission to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I glanced at my friends who were positioned throughout the venue, ready to execute their roles in the chaos we had planned. They had no idea of the true depth of my intentions, only that I wanted to create a memorable scene. Finally, the moment arrived. Mark took the stage and the guests quieted down, their attention focused on him. He began to sing, his smooth voice filling the room and captivating the audience. I felt a surge of anger as I watched Sarah sway gently to the music, her eyes shining with admiration. It was everything I couldn't stand, her joy, his confidence. I took a deep breath, steadied my nerves, and made my way toward the back of the venue where my friends were discreetly waiting. I gave them a nod, and they knew it was time to set the plan in motion. The first part of our distraction involved a staged argument. Two of my friends, a couple who had been in on the plan, began to raise their voices, pretending to fight over something trivial. Their voices carried above the music, and a few heads turned in their direction. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I saw people's attention shift from Mark to the commotion. As the argument escalated, I stepped back into the shadows, allowing the chaos to unfold. My heart raced as I watched the guests react. Some laughed while others looked concerned. This was just the beginning. I glanced at Mark, who had momentarily stopped singing, his brow furrowed in confusion. He looked around, trying to gauge what was happening, and for a brief moment I savored the sight of his uncertainty. It was a small victory, but it fueled my fire. As the argument reached a fever pitch, I signaled to the other part of my plan. Another friend, who had been lurking near the bar, pretended to spill a drink on a guest, causing even more disruption. The room erupted into laughter, gasps, and chaos as people turned to see what was happening. Mark, clearly frustrated, tried to regain control of the situation. He attempted to coax the guests back to the music, but the noise grew louder, drowning out his voice. I felt a thrill as I watched his composure falter, each moment of confusion and frustration pushing me closer to my goal. But I knew I had to take it further. I had to ensure that Mark would feel the full weight of my revenge. I moved toward the front of the venue, where the sound equipment was set up. I had done my homework. I had learned just enough about sound systems to execute the next part of my plan. As I approached the equipment, I saw the sound technician distracted by the chaos in the room. Quickly and quietly, I reached for the microphone Mark had been using. I switched it off, then adjusted the settings on the mixer, ensuring that when Mark tried to speak or sing again, his voice would be drowned out by static. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears as I made the adjustments, trying to remain calm and collected. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I would ensure Mark lost his voice both literally and figuratively. With the equipment set, I stepped back into the crowd, blending in with the guests who were enjoying the unfolding drama. I felt a mix of exhilaration and dread. What if I was caught? What if someone recognized me? But the thought of Sarah's face, of her betrayal, pushed me forward. I had to see this through. Mark finally regained some composure and attempted to start singing again. The moment he opened his mouth, the static erupted, completely drowning out his voice. Confusion spread across his face, and I could see the panic begin to set in. The guests started to murmur, some laughing, while others looked around in confusion. I watched as Mark tried to adjust the microphone, his frustration palpable. He gestured to the sound technician, but the chaos from the argument and the drink spill had drawn everyone's attention away from him. The louder he sang, the more the static seemed to mock him, rendering his efforts futile. At that moment, I felt a rush of satisfaction. This was it. This was my revenge manifesting in real time. Mark was losing control, and I was the puppeteer pulling strings from the shadows. But as I reveled in my small victory, I noticed Sarah's expression change. She looked confused, then concerned, and finally, her eyes narrowed as she scanned the crowd, searching for answers. I could see the realization dawning on her face that something was amiss. A pang of guilt shot through me. I had wanted to hurt Mark, but I hadn't considered how this would affect Sarah. I had become so consumed by my desire for revenge that I hadn't thought about the consequences of my actions. As the commotion continued, I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. I was crossing a line I could never uncross, and I had to wonder, was this worth it? Before I could dwell on my doubts, Mark's frustration reached a boiling point. He threw down the microphone in defeat, the sound echoing through the venue. The guests gasped, some laughing, others murmuring in disbelief. I felt a surge of triumph at his humiliation, but it was quickly overshadowed by a creeping sense of unease. This wasn't the victory I had imagined. I hadn't just ruined Mark's performance, I had also disrupted what should have been a beautiful day for a couple in love. As I backed away from the chaos, I realized that revenge had a price, and I was beginning to understand the cost of mine. The atmosphere in the venue shifted dramatically as Mark stormed off the stage, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. I stood frozen, caught in a web of my own making, watching as the laughter and chatter of the guests morphed into whispers of confusion and concern. I had orchestrated this chaos, but the reality of what I had done began to sink in, heavy and suffocating. Sarah's eyes darted around the room, searching for answers. When they finally landed on me, I felt a jolt of panic. I quickly looked away, my heart racing as shame washed over me. I hadn't just sabotaged Mark's gig, I had also put Sarah in a position to witness the fallout of my actions. This was not how I wanted her to see me. I had wanted to reclaim my dignity, but all I felt now was like a coward hiding in the shadows. As Mark disappeared backstage, I saw him slam a door behind him, the sound echoing through the venue. Like a gunshot, the guests began to murmur among themselves, their laughter fading into a buzz of concern. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Had I gone too far? Suddenly I was jolted out of my thoughts by the sound of footsteps approaching. It was Sarah, her expression a mix of anger and confusion. "Alex, what just happened?" she demanded, her voice rising above the noise. I swallowed hard, the weight of her gaze pinning me in place. I had to think quickly. "I don't know," I stammered, forcing a frown onto my face. "I think something went wrong with the sound equipment." She crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. "You're lying. You were staring at him like you were waiting for something to happen. Did you do this?" My heart raced as I realized I was caught. The truth was a slippery slope, and I didn't want to reveal the depths of my obsession. "No, I swear, I just noticed the chaos and I thought he was messing up," I lied, hopping to deflect her suspicions. Sarah shook her head, clearly unconvinced. "This isn't you, Alex. You would do something like this. You're not a vindictive person." Her words stung even as they rang true. I had changed, transformed by the betrayal that had consumed me. "I just wanted to protect us," I said, my voice softer now. "I wanted to make sure he didn't hurt you, didn't take you away from me." She stepped back, her expression softening for a moment, but it quickly hardened again. "By ruining someone's career, Alex, that's not how you handle things. You should have talked to me. You should have trusted me." In that moment, I felt the full weight of my actions crashing down on me. I had acted out of anger and jealousy, blinded by my emotions. I had wanted to punish Mark, but in doing so, I had hurt Sarah. I had put her in a position where she had to choose between her loyalty to me and her sense of right and wrong. Before I could respond, the wedding planner rushed over, her face flushed with frustration. "What happened out there?" The singer just walked off stage. I could see the panic in her eyes as she searched for answers. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. This was not just a petty revenge scheme, it was real and it had consequences. I think there was a problem with the sound," I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't mean for it to escalate like this." The wedding planner's eyes narrowed. "You didn't mean for it to escalate. This is a disaster. We can't have a wedding without the entertainment." As she stormed away, I felt Sarah's gaze on me again. "What did you think would happen? You can't just destroy someone's life because you're hurt. That's not how love works." Her words cut deeper than any knife. I had lost sight of everything I believed in, everything I had once valued. I had let my emotions drive me to this point, and now I was standing in the ruins of my own making. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the admission tasting bitter on my tongue. "I thought I could make it right, but I only made it worse." Sarah's expression softened, but the hurt in her eyes remained. "You need to fix this, Alex. You need to make it right." Panic surged through me again. How could I fix this? I had already crossed a line that I couldn't uncross, but deep down I knew I had to try. I had to confront my actions and face the man I had become. Before I could respond, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. It was Mark, looking disheveled and furious. He had changed out of his performance outfit and was now dressed in casual jeans and a t-shirt, but the anger radiating off him was palpable. Who the hell did this? He shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Was it you? He pointed directly at me, his eyes blazing with fury. I felt my heart race as I faced him. Mark, it's not what you think, not what I think, he interrupted, stepping closer. You ruined my performance. Do you have any idea how hard I worked for this gig? Do you know how many people were counting on me? I didn't mean to, I started, but he cut me off again. Didn't mean to, you think this is a joke. You think you can just mess with someone's life because you're jealous. You're pathetic. His words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I felt the anger rising within me again. But this time it was directed at myself. I had let my jealousy consume me, and now I was facing the consequences. Look, I'm sorry, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I just wanted to protect what we had. By destroying me, Mark shot back, his voice laced with disbelief. You think that's how you win someone back? You think that's how love works? I could see the hurt in his eyes, and for a moment I felt a flicker of empathy. I had become the villain in this story, and now I was facing the man I had tried to ruin. Maybe you should have thought about that before you started flirting with my wife. I snapped back, the anger flaring within me again. Mark's expression shifted, and I could see the realization dawning on him. So that's what this is about. You think I stole her from you. You think I wanted to come between you two, didn't you? I demanded, my voice rising again. Listen to yourself, he shouted, his frustration palpable. You're blaming me for something that's not my fault. If she wanted you, she wouldn't be here, would she? You need to wake up, man. You're losing her, and it's not because of me. His words struck me with an uncomfortable truth, and I felt the weight of my actions pressing down on me. I had been so consumed by revenge that I hadn't considered Sarah's feelings or the reality of our relationship. As I stood there facing Mark, I realized that revenge wouldn't heal my wounds. It wouldn't bring back the love I had lost. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself as I faced the consequences of my actions. I had to make things right, not just for Mark, but for Sarah and for myself. I'm sorry, I said again, my voice steadier now. I need to fix this. I need to make it right. Mark's anger began to fade, replaced by a weary resignation. You can't fix this with words. You need to show her you care. You need to be better than this. And as I stood there, I realized he was right. I had to confront my own shortcomings to face the man I had become. I had to fight for Sarah, not against Mark. As I turned to look for her, I knew I was at a crossroads. I could either continue down this dark path of revenge, or I could choose to be the man I once was, a man capable of love, forgiveness, and understanding. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what would come next. I had to find Sarah and tell her everything. I had to be honest, not just about my actions, but about my feelings. I had to fight for her, even if it meant facing the consequences of my mistakes. This was my chance to reclaim my dignity, to step out of the shadows, and to show her that I could be better. I pushed through the crowd, my heart pounding as I searched for Sarah. The chaos from the wedding had reached a fever pitch, and I could hear the guests murmuring, their laughter replaced by whispers of confusion. I felt a sense of urgency. I had to find her before the moment slipped away entirely. Finally, I spotted her near the bar, her expression a mix of disbelief and hurt. She looked lost, surrounded by friends who were trying to console her. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me as I approached. This was my fault. I had let my jealousy and rage dictate my actions, and now I was standing on the brink of losing everything. Sarah, I called out, desperation lacing my voice. She turned to me, her eyes narrowing as she took in my presence. Alex, she said, her tone cold and guarded. What do you want? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. I need to talk to you. Please, can we step outside? She hesitated for a moment, her gaze flickering to the chaos behind me. Finally, she nodded, and we stepped out into the cool evening air. The noise from the wedding faded as we found a quiet corner away from the crowd. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? She said, her voice trembling with emotion. You made a scene, Alex. You humiliated him in front of everyone. I know, and I'm sorry, I said, my voice earnest. I let my anger take control. I thought I was protecting us, but I realize now that I was only hurting you. She crossed her arms, her expression still hard. You think you can just apologize and make it all better. You can't just destroy someone's life because you're hurt. I know, I admitted, my heart heavy with the weight of my actions. I was consumed by jealousy and rage. I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about you. Her expression softened slightly, but the hurt was still there. You need to understand that what you did was wrong. You can't just take matters into your own hands. It's not fair to me or to Mark. I know, I repeated, my voice steady. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to make it right. I want to show you that I can be better, that I can be the man you fell in love with. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine for sincerity. You really think you can fix this, after everything that's happened? I have to try, I said, my voice firm. I need to confront Mark and apologize. I need to take responsibility for my actions. I can't keep running from this. Sarah's expression shifted, a mixture of surprise and uncertainty crossing her face. You want to apologize to him after what you did? Yes, I replied, determination flooding my veins. I need to face him and acknowledge the pain I caused. It's the only way I can move forward. She studied me for a long moment, and I could see the conflict within her. I don't know if that's enough, Alex. You need to understand that trust has been broken. It's not something that can be fixed overnight. I know it won't be easy, I said, desperation creeping into my voice. But I want to fight for us. I want to be the man who deserves your love, not the man who let his anger destroy everything. After what felt like an eternity, she sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. Okay, if you're serious about this, I'll support you. But you need to do this for the right reasons, not just to win me back. I promise, I said, the weight of my words settling over me. This is about making amends, not just for you, but for me too. I can't keep living in the shadows of my own mistakes. We stood there for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words. I could feel the tension between us, and I knew that this was just the beginning of a long road to healing. But at least now I had a direction. With newfound resolve, I turned and headed back inside, Sarah by my side. I spotted Mark standing near the bar, visibly shaken and surrounded by a few guests who were trying to console him. My heart raced as I approached, the weight of what I was about to do pressing down on my shoulders. "Mark," I called out, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. He turned to me, anger and confusion flashing in his eyes. "What do you want?" he snapped, his defenses still up. "I'm here to apologize," I said, my voice firm. "I messed up. I let my jealousy and anger dictate my actions, and I shouldn't have taken it out on you." He studied me for a moment, his expression shifting from anger to surprise. "You think an apology will fix everything? You think that's enough after what you did?" "No," I admitted, taking a step closer. "I know it's not enough, but I want to take responsibility for my actions. I want to make amends, and I need you to know that I regret what I did." His expression softened slightly, but he still looked guarded. "You made a fool out of me in front of everyone. You think that's just going to go away?" "I understand that," I said, my voice earnest. "I can't change what happened, but I can try to make it right. I don't want to be that person anymore." Mark looked away for a moment, his jaw clenched. "You need to understand that trust is hard to rebuild. You've created a mess that won't be easy to clean up." "I know," I replied, my heart heavy with the weight of my apology. "But I'm willing to try, for Sarah, for you. I just want to move forward." After a long pause, he finally nodded, albeit reluctantly. "I appreciate you coming to me, but it's going to take more than words to fix this." "I understand," I said, feeling a flicker of hope. "I'm ready to put in the work." As the tension between us began to ease, I turned to see Sarah watching from a distance, her expression a mixture of pride and uncertainty. I had taken the first step toward redemption, and it felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. In that moment, I realized that revenge had not been the answer. It had only led to more pain and heartache. Instead, I had to focus on healing, on rebuilding trust, and on becoming a better version of myself. As I walked back to Sarah, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I was no longer just a man consumed by jealousy and rage. I was a man ready to fight for love, ready to face the consequences of my actions, and ready to embrace the journey ahead. "Thank you for supporting me," I said softly as I reached her side. "I promise I won't let you down again." She smiled faintly, the warmth returning to her eyes. "We'll see, Alex, but I believe you can do this." And as I took her hand in mine, I knew that the path to redemption would be long and difficult, but I was willing to walk it together. In the end, I learned that love is not just about passion. It's about trust, respect, and the willingness to confront one's own demons. I had made my choices, but now I was ready to make better ones for Sarah, for Mark, and for myself. The journey wouldn't be easy, but it was a journey worth taking. And in that moment, I knew I was on the right path.